This is Tinker Reddy, journalism lecturer, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes a good story. What's a good story? And a lot of times for my students I get topics, like I want to write a story about the drop in vaccines, or I want to write a story about the measles outbreak in California. And, those are topics, and what you need to do is narrow down on the topic, find something new that's going on with the topic. For example, those two stories are related, and here's a story from the LA Times, which is about measles. So there's been a couple of outbreaks of measles, and pretty big ones, and it's part of a trend of people who were nervous about the side effects of vaccines were not getting their kids vaccinated. So now there's an outbreak of measles, and so here's this story. This is a nice story. It's about how doctors don't know how to recognize measles when someone comes in with it because they've not ever seen cases of measles. Because my generation, where vaccines were new, we were just vaccinated, very thoroughly, and so we didn't get them. So, like many younger physicians, Sammons, who graduated from medical school in 2006, trained with the disease when the disease was no longer an issue in the United States. I have not cared for patients with measles. I hope I never have to. A decade-long effort to immunize American children managed to wipe out the last homegrown cases in 2000, but the virus can still arrive here from other countries and spread. Today, as California faces its largest outbreak since the disease was declared eliminated, some worry that the battle against measles has become a victim of its own success. That's why that's a story. That's what makes that a story. Here's a story about the Koch brothers. They're two very wealthy corporate guys. They're in the oil business, and they spend a lot of money on super conservative candidates, political candidates. They're very politically active, and their names are all over things. They just give out money like crazy. So here's a story. So I want to do a story on the Koch brothers. I want to do a story about wealthy industrialists who fund political campaigns. George Soros is someone who's on the left who does that. The Koch brothers are on the right. So that's not a story, but the story that they're going to be spending more than both parties is kind of amazing. They're spending a huge amount of money outside of the political system, beyond the political network, unparalleled effort by coordinated outside groups to shape the presidential election that is already on track to be the most expensive in history. That's what makes this a story, just the amount of money that's going on here. So we'll see what kind of results they get with that. So you want to write a story about the Keystone Pipeline. That's interesting. But what this story is about is that in addition to the environmentalists, and they have these farm families who have been fighting these pipelines, different pipelines like this, their whole lives, or through several generations. And so the pipeline project has become a cause to live, not just among conservatives who cite it as potential to create jobs, or environmentalists who lament the risks and say it poses to groundwater. Several farmers like the Harringtons are also in a personal battle to protect land that in many cases has been passed down through the generations. This week, TransCanada companies proposing the pipeline began eminent domain proceedings in Nebraska County courts seeking to gain access to almost 90 properties where the owners have not agreed to terms. Many of these landowners said they have no intention of allowing construction. So this is a really interesting story about how these farmers that just want to protect their land are against the pipeline too. So that's what makes it a story. That's what makes it different. So this is a feature story. It could happen anytime, but it's about animal friendship, viral stuff that's online, and what it really means as far as animal behavior goes. Videos of unlikely pairs romping or snuggling have become so common that they are piquing the interest of some scientists who say they invite more systematic study. Among other things, researchers say the alliance could add to an understanding of how species communicate, what propels certain animals to connect across species lines, and the degree to which some animals can adopt the behaviors of other species. That takes something that's in the news, something goofy, viral, it's really in the zeitgeist, the viral animal things. I watch them, as you know, I put them on the website sometimes if you're in my class, and finds a scientific angle in it. And I think that's just an awesome story idea. This is pretty much, focuses on one guy. It's a profile of a guy, and that's a good sports story, focus on one person, and he represents a trend, actually. Maybe there's a trend here, or an exception. If there's not a trend, it's an exception. So I think you can get the point that this is what makes something a story idea. It has to have that angle. It has to have the little nut, like, here's what makes this unusual and different, and why you should be interested. It's not just the same story you've read in several other places before. It's not some overview update of something that's been around for a long time. So I write for this outfit, Health Leaders Media, and my readers are Hospitals. Medicare unveils alternative payment models. Who would want to read that? Would you want to read that? No, but someone who runs a hospital is interested in that. And so I have to come up with stories that are interesting, that are of interest to people who are in hospitals. We compete with a publication called Modern Healthcare, which has been around for a long time, and a lot of other different websites. So we don't try and do sort of really cutting edge, not cutting edge, but breaking news, but I try to find little stories, different stories. I have talked a lot about how to go through publications, online sites, trade associations, government documents, all the different talking to people, all the different sources of story ideas. So here's from Mobile Health News. It's some not obscure, but it's a web news site, a web first news site, but it's very specific on mobile health app type things. New Jersey hospitals to set up digital health store. So inside this hospital in New Jersey, they have a store that sells Fitbits and, digital health gear. I think that's a great story. I can nationalize it. This is a national publication. It's for people all over the country. And see if other hospitals are doing it.